If you're anything like most beginners, flying the jets and helicopters in Battlefield 4 usually leads to crashing right into the ground, or worse, you get discouraged from even flying because you're intimidated by more experienced pilots, so you don't even bother flying, or you just leave the air toys for your friends who are better at them than you are. Well, that's all about to change, because in this video you'll find out some useful tips, and I hope that you'll be obliged enough to skip over any tips that you may already know. If you're already a pro in the sky, then watching this video will only reinforce proper positive flying behavior, and who knows, maybe you'll learn something new that you haven't learned yet. Just watch this video and I guess we'll both see. Now, as with most tutorials, I believe that taking you through the obvious is pointless, so I'll just show you the highlights instead. That is, every good pilot knows that the test range and air superiority is where you're going to get the most out of your learning how to fly. And instead of just showing you footage of the test range like everyone else seems to be doing, it's probably best to just leave you to the exploring it for yourself. Of course, you're probably going to hear your friends tell you that the test range isn't necessary, or they may even poke a bit of fun at you for it, but if you were to think of it as a sort of a piloting school, then with a bit of luck, you'll be a force to be reckoned with, and your friends won't want to fly against you because suddenly you'll be so good at it. So without further delay, let's get to some tips. Tip number 1 is to adjust your control settings. After testing all sorts of different configurations on the PS4, I settled with adjusting my controller settings to veteran button layout and my stick configuration to legacy. I do this for both the helicopter and the jets. In fact, I do it for all the vehicles. I found this combination to be extremely accurate and incredibly easy to control once you get the hang of it. Veteran button layout works well when flying because your left 2 and R2 buttons are the brake and the gas. When you fly a helicopter, you can freeze your crosshairs on target by holding R2 and L2 at the same time and then letting go of both of those as you coast your bullets through your targets, so to speak. This works the same in jets, and as a side tip, this is also true for just about any vehicle with the veteran button layout. Tip number 2 is get flying time in the test range, get a feel for how the vehicle works. While I've already mentioned this, before entering into a competitive game, I usually warm up in the test range first. Not only do I fly helicopters and jets, but I quick scope targets and get my aiming warmed up. Just think, athletes warm up and take practice shots before entering a real game. In fact, they practice a whole week before they even get into a real game. This game is no different. Not if you want to dominate the skies. Practice makes perfect. However, don't get too used to not being shot at, because shooting stationary or even generic moving targets without getting shot at by enemies in the test range is nothing compared to when you're in the real battlefield getting locked on by stingers, SOFLAMs, igloos, or the AA shooting active radar missiles at you from their home base. The third tip is to stay away from the enemy's home base or carrier. A lot of new pilots are unaware and do not know that there's an AA equipped at every base on both sides, and if you get spotted by the enemy and they hold their field of vision on your plane or your helicopter, the AA will go to work and shred apart your plane. So if you're gonna fly through there, it's often best to hit your ECM jammer long before, so nobody can spot you, and preferably as your ECM jammer is going over the base. Tip number 4 is to let your vehicle coast. As I mentioned before, when you squeeze the L2 and R2 buttons with the veteran layout, your crosshairs will freeze and your vehicle will freeze, and therefore you can let go of both buttons and sort of just coast right into your target as you hold the L1 button down to shoot. Now, because your aiming probably won't be perfect 100% of the time, you may need to make some adjustments and fine-tune your aiming, and I strongly encourage you that if you're using the legacy stick layout, to use only one or the other joystick, that with experience you'll know which one to select, as it will line up perfectly with your target and you can just shred them to pieces. Tip number 5 is to Morse code your shots at first and then let it rain down full blast. The farther away from your target you are, the farther apart your shots should be timed. As you get closer and closer, you can eventually just hold the L1 button down. Tip number 6 is that when your vehicle bumps something, such as the ground or a tree or even the side of a building, it often magically puts you on the course, on the proper course, if you let go of all of the buttons, including the gas and the brake. If you think your helicopter is going to crash, just bail out of it, as it will often just magically land and not blow up. The 7th and final tip that I'd like to share with you in this video is to stay off the gas about 90% of the time when flying jets, and use your brake more often than anything else. This allows you to easily get behind your opponents and to outmaneuver them because they're simply just going too fast and therefore making wider turns. The approximate speed that you should hold is roughly around 300 to 315 miles an hour. And you can see that if you go into your cockpit and look from first person. Now that you know the tips that I shared with you, here's a mistake that I think you should be very cautious to avoid, and that is not being conscientious of defense strategies. Learning to time when to use your flares or your ECM jammers is going to be one of the best strategies that is going to save you and make you a good pilot in the long run. Stay close to the ground when flying and trying to evade missiles and lock-ons, and use your environment, such as buildings and cliffs, to avoid being detected. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Mr. Invisible. If you like it, please hit the subscribe or like button below. Thank you.